A presentation by Professor E.Yastrebova and Associate Professor D.Kryachkov, Revolution or Evolution, how students and professors of the School of International Relations view innovations in language teaching. So I would like to give the floor to my colleague Elena E.Yastrebova. Good morning, dear friends. The topic of our presentation is consonant with the topic of the conference. When we were starting to work on it, I was looking at innovations, and I think that this is what my colleague Dmitry Kryachkov did as a researcher. But when we came to the concluding stage of preparation and were to present our findings, well, today on television I heard two things that were said about innovations. That there is some new innovative shampoo which will solve all the problems you may have about your hair or with your hair. And the second one was that there's a wonderful innovative medicine for treating the flu. So that reminded me that we live in an environment of innovation, and we are going to discuss innovation in our professional lives. We shall start with some history, and then we shall get down to the practical aspects of this issue. We all live in a broad, innovative environment, and we live in a broad educational environment. And if we go to the next slide, we also live in a broad language training environment of our university and our School of International Relations. The number of languages taught here has already been mentioned by the rector of our university. And here you see many of the flags of the countries whose languages we are teaching. Actually, there was not enough room for all the flags, but actually the tasks that foreign language teachers are faced with are mostly common. And when we speak about innovation, we shall speak about our common tasks. The first premise was that teaching a foreign language, we have difficulty because the system is complicated on its own, and what is important for us is are two aspects. One is the sustainability of the system, and the other one is development of the system and its evolution. And Professor Tarkunov spoke wonderfully about conservatism and sustainability. The good things that have already been accumulated should be preserved. We sometimes like to depart from the old and start something new, embark on something new, without knowing whether it will work well. And when we look at the competence approach and how it was introduced, well, probably everyone will realize and agree with me that this approach has not yet been fully developed, and we haven't yet switched to it completely. The second aspect is also an important aspect of the functioning of the training system, and development and evolution now represents innovations in our teaching. So on the basis of analyzing a lot of scholarly work, both in the West and in Russia, we identified the most important characteristics. The novelty. Well, of course, there won't be any innovation without some novelty contained in it. Then it is also clear that novelty is a relative notion. What is new for one person may be something he has known for quite some time for another person. So novelty is just one component. The next component is the fact that the changes that novelty involves should be positive. We know that not all the changes are positive, not all of them are for the better, and some innovation which works wonderfully in research, because when you get a negative result, it's also a result. Probably would not be very good for teachers, because we don't like negative results or bad results. So this positive nature of change is very important for us. And the third element is that these changes should be targeted. Some spontaneous changes, which we very often come across against, don't always work, and more often they don't work at all for the purposes which we have in mind. So having defined and identified what we understand by innovation, a targeted change, introduction of novelties, ideas, concepts, and practices of teaching foreign languages aimed at getting the best possible real result in real life. So higher language communicative ability and competence of the student. So having defined this theoretical concept, we can go on to the next one and discuss the causes which make innovation necessary. Well, we divide them into two groups. I don't think it will be new for you. Objective causes dictated by changes in the economic, political, and social environment. The global changes that make universities, and not only universities, but the government of the country, which make the government require from us a better command of the language. These are objective causes dictated to us and made necessary by the developing context, because contexts have become very versatile. Without a common language base, a common linguistic base, we cannot ensure this. And there are, of course, subjective causes. And I shall give you an example. For a university which would like to have a higher status, which would like to ensure its survival, introducing additional language programs is the resource which very often keeps a university afloat. And there are also personal causes, and there are a myriad causes, one-upmanship, better career prospects, and you can go on without end. And from the causes, let us go on to the components of this. Well, we are used to three sources and three components, those who studied scientific communism, but now there are four sources. The Ministry of Education on top of it, universities and colleges, and there are many, they are different. The next group is research centers and think tanks, which very often work in cooperation with government bodies and provide innovative ideas, though the process can be directed in a different direction. Very often the idea is generated by the research center, and then it goes from bottom to top. Yes, and the last one, the last source is the creative teams and individuals. That is the innovations which are generated by us of our own accord. And now from theory, let us go on to practice as the criterion of the truth. And we circulated a questionnaire among the students and teachers of our university, and we happened to get 100 questionnaires back from teachers, and 102 students, mostly of the fourth year, filled in our questionnaire, and our colleagues from foreign language departments of other schools of this university filled out 31 questionnaires, and we compared the findings, the results, the assessments of different groups, and some of the questionnaires were filled out anonymously. And when we polled teachers, we asked our young colleagues, the medium age link, so to speak, and the older generation. And here is what we have found. What do we and students consider to be innovations? To begin with, manuals, teaching material is the leader. This is the most important part of innovation. And computer technologies, are twice less important, which was somewhat unexpected for us. At the level of classroom meetings, the contact hours that we have are again group 3, and again in group 4, interaction between students and teachers, and the change in the nature of these relations. And on the basis of this, we asked the question of what teachers were actually aiming at.
And it turned out, as we expected, for most of them, the language proficiency of their students was important. And second was the quality of language education on the whole. The efficiency of improving the quality of classes was of less interest for teachers, and very few teachers were interested about the status of the university. So most important for the teachers is the quality that we pass to students. And as to the students, a similar picture. They also expect a higher proficiency level. And then the pie followed the same way. The classes are supposed to be interesting, and then their own competitiveness was important. A large piece of pie, over a third, of students chose all the first 3 elements. The next question, which was of critical importance for us, and that is, what is the success of innovation for teachers? How do they understand innovation or success of innovation? How this is understood by the target group, the teachers and the students? So what did we find out? That success depends for most teachers, well, probably not for most teachers, but for half the teachers. Success depends on the initiative coming from the top. So the authorities are responsible. Those who believe that success depends on the initiative coming from the bottom, these people account only for 30%. And we described the climate as the weather in the home. This is the readiness of the teachers and students to adopt innovations. Here the situation is more promising, more optimistic. 30% of teachers and 25% of students believe that this is the most important condition. Now, the last 3 columns, which are quite modest, and they refer to financing. I hope those who decide how to spend money on innovations are not here in the hall. Therefore, I can quite sincerely say that most participants don't believe that financing is important in the sphere of innovation. So what did we receive as a result? Well, so when we looked at the results that I explained a minute ago, we faced a kind of crisis in our thinking, because these results kind of run counter to our hypothesis when we believed that the success of the innovation depends on the situation when the authorities and the rank and file are prepared for innovation. And then a revolution happens, a burst of activity, of creative activity, and this results in the most successful innovation. But unfortunately, these data shows a different approach. Then we asked a different question. Can there be a revolutionary feeling among the rank and file participants, teachers and students? We asked them both a question. Have you ever faced a situation when you wanted to change everything, when you understood that you didn't want the old way of things? And people said yes, we have experienced such sentiments. Over 50% of teachers said yes, and almost 50% of students said yes. We made then the next step and asked the next question: what is the incentive for innovations for teachers? Why do teachers find them attractive? And we discovered that the leading incentive is an interest towards a new activity, self-realization. This is an incentive of a similar nature. And the insistence coming from the authorities, from the top, is not really important. Only about 10% believe that this is an important incentive. This is the will of the authorities, the will of the top people. Is there anything in the innovations which pushes us away from the innovations? First of all, a reluctance to follow the explanation of the author of the innovation. This is rejecting the innovation idea, which is so dear to the author of the innovation. And people don't believe in the success of the innovation, believe that they consume too much time, too much effort, but this is of less importance. People are prepared to sacrifice their time and effort. So the first two elements, this is rejecting the innovation as such, leads us to the next question. What do teachers believe to be a successful innovation? And here I will have a 20-second interval, 20 seconds, and I want you to ask your neighbors. I'll give you 20 seconds to ask your neighbors questions. Discuss it in groups of two. From your point of view, what is a successful innovation? So in your departments, language departments where you teach, discuss in groups of 2 or 3 what you believe is to be a successful innovation. And then we shall compare results.
Ставки сделаны.
Okay, time to continue. Let's continue and try to deal with the contradiction, because this question emerged because we kind of had a feeling that 50% of us believe that success depends on the innovations coming from the top, and the other 50% rejects innovations because they do not believe in the innovations themselves. Now, I would like to remember our previous Minister of Education, Mr. Fursenko, who said the innovation is a great risk, and innovations coming from the top is a double risk. And he is very distrustful. He was very distrustful when ideas in the field of education are pushed through from the top, because he believes that such ideas are doomed to failure. So according to our data, the leaders were computer classes, multimedia classes. Then the textbooks published here in Russia of the new generation. So for the teachers, students mostly believe in the communicative approach. And young teachers, I must say that for them what is most important is the communication approach. That's probably because they like to communicate. And the next place was taken by the competence approach. Because when we asked this question openly, we received a variety of answers. And we grouped those answers in the following way, into 3 main categories. So first of all, what wishes do our participants have in the field of technology? They have lots of wishes, different wishes, far-reaching wishes. But what they want is better technology. They want to use distance education and computers in every classroom, and in electronic textbooks and so on. In the field of technology, there were also diverse proposals, but most of them focused on the textbooks of the new generation and bringing together domestic methodology and foreign methodology, elaborating individual methodologies and methods. Much attention was also given to training new teachers and improving their competence. The need to send people to foreign countries, participating in various seminars and conferences, the chance to organize such conferences inside the university and with other universities. So there have been many proposals. And there was another proposal here, another idea, and we called it, science fiction or dreams from the field of dreams. And the first dream is for us to have our salaries increased, for us to have less paperwork, for us to use Skype for our classes. If the teacher is unable to attend classes, then the teacher should be able to use Skype for classes, and also even creating a laboratory of our own to prepare listening material or video material or audio material. The next item, relying on what we have described to you and what we have analyzed, we see the following picture as to the ways, as to the roads that we can embark upon. So the first, so innovations coming from the top. And the innovations coming from the top receive a positive response from the bottom, from the rank and file. First, there can be some reserve. It can be a reserved response. So we received from the top the idea of computerizing our teaching process, and we received it rather enthusiastically. And our university is quite proud of the computers and multimedia laboratories which we have at the university. We are proud of it, and this is the kind of innovation which makes it possible to make teaching foreign languages more efficient. Now, road number 2, when the innovation comes from the top, but it is received rather with reserve, with some constraint. We wanted to use the yellow light of the traffic lights and to show the pedestrians who are afraid to cross the street because of the yellow signal. But still, I don't mean that this is necessarily a failure. We remember our own experience when the beginning of the innovation was met with reluctance, but as a result, we received a high-quality product. This is our electronic course, not the only one which we use at our university. And today, at the workshop of Dmitry Novikov and Dmitry Smirnov and Olga Kravtsova, you will hear at the workshop how to work with this electronic version compared with the paper version. And the next possibility, the next path, this is the innovation which we cherished as our original hypothesis. And this is the innovation which comes as a result of the top meeting the bottom is most productive and most successful. The proof of the success is the real explosion of the creative activity when back in 2008 we were involved with the innovation project aimed at elaborating new manuals and new methodological complexes. I'm afraid that not all of them are covered by this slide, but if you are interested in these textbooks, you can find them in our bookstore here. And the innovation for itself. This is for ourselves. This is what we do in the classroom every day. And this is what is the collection of the selection material, which gives us a chance to grow further on. And this is where successful innovations grow, on which they rely. Successful domestic methods. Now we're approaching conclusion. How can we grow an ideal innovation? For this, we need a well-fertilized soil. When I say well-fertilized, and what is the fertilizer? This is the feeling of discontent that we feel when we don't want to work in the old way. These are the ideas that take root in or which are born in our heads. And when these ideas find fertilized soil, and the care is provided by the climate created by our authorities, and we wanted to show a rain, a golden rain. This is financing of our projects. And when all these elements come together, then we receive a good crop, really a good and viable innovation. And in conclusion, one more thing I wanted to emphasize. The process which we have described is an evolutionary process. We don't need revolutions in teaching. We need evolution, a positive, gradual, well-targeted activity aimed at receiving pleasure from our work, because we'll feel satisfaction when we reach good results. And all this depends on changing ourselves inside. When we change the weather inside ourselves, when we feel that we are ready to adopt not only our innovation, but the innovation offered from the outside, then we we observe the main conditions for change. Change in the educational space, in the educational activity, and the most important consideration in our comfortable professional life, which is called teaching foreign languages. Long live innovation, evolution. Thank you for your attention.
Уважаемые коллеги, пожалуйста, вопросы.
Dear colleagues, you're welcome with your questions. Anyway, I will be here today and tomorrow from morning till night. If questions arise, you're welcome to approach me, or you can send questions to these two addresses. And Dmitry Kryachkov is a co-author of this report. You can ask him your questions. He is very busy with other organizational activities. That's why he didn't take part in the presentation as such.